when people are sick, as I always keep saying, the disconnect between mental health and physical health is that, like, when people go in to have a heart issue or whatever, diabetes, whatever, there's always the cards, the flowers, the stuff they're given. But when people are into a mental health facility, it's like, we don't talk about that. We put it in the closet, and that's where the whole stigma needs to be eradicated.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health. I'm your host, Todd Rennebaum. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in this week. If you're a first-time listener, welcome. I hope you like what you hear and you stick around. It seems as though lots of people are getting lots of things from the podcast, which is amazing. Tons and tons of incredible guests that are open and vulnerable and speak about their mental illnesses and mental health issues, and lots of people are reaching out to me, relating and thanking the guests through me for sharing and for making them not feel so alone and normalizing mental health and mental illnesses and getting rid of the stigma. Speaking of getting rid of a stigma, my guest this week is Glenn Roil, and he is a massive mental health advocate, international award winner. In fact, he's received the 2022 Lionel Aldridge Champions Award from the National Alliance on Mental Illness in the U.S. He's, I believe, the only Canadian to ever have won that award. He's also won the 2021 Newfoundland Human Rights Award, champion for mental health from the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador's Human Rights Commission. So he's a big deal. People know him. And I've said this before already, talking about him, he's got a really great accent from Newfoundland. See if you can, it's subtle. See if you can hear it. But before we hear from Glenn, I like to talk about a few guests that are coming up in the coming weeks. Next week, I'm speaking with Emmanuel Flores. He is Mexican born and he lives in Montreal now with his family. He's a new author, and his book, Men Get Raped, is coming out right away. He's also an advocate, and mostly for men's mental health. And I believe he's part of a group called Misguided Masculinity. Super nice guy. We met a few times on Instagram and done a few collaborations on there. Speaking of Instagram, follow me on Instagram so that you can check out my lives. I'm doing a live every week with a guest on there as well. On Sunday, March 26th, I'm doing an Instagram live with Desiree Ford, and you might remember her from episode 70. I spoke with her about surviving a car crash and her recovery with a brain injury. She still has a brain injury, but we're going to catch up and talk about mental health and about our lives. And the one after that is April 3rd. I speak with a fella named Tim, and he's a former addict and alcoholic, and now he's a fitness guy. And so we're going to talk about that. I never actually talked with Tim before, so that'll be fun. And that's on Instagram Lives. Follow me on Instagram, Bunny Hugs Podcast, so that you can check those out. Usually a couple days before the lives and the days of, I post the time because it changes every time. It depends on the guest and what time zone they're in and stuff. So it's always changing, but you can follow me on Instagram and find the posts. But anyway, this week, Glenn Roil, international award-winning mental health advocate. So without further ado, I give you Glenn Roil.
And I know it's kind of timely too, Todd, because I was in touch with one of my contacts at the Canadian Psychological Association. They put out a press now before Trudeau's meeting with the premiers on Tuesday, talking about how, mental health and addictions have been the ugly stepchild of the healthcare system for a long time, and talking about the 5 billion mental health transfers now, not just the canned health transfers, but so, it's time for Trudeau and them to put something on this at all, because, if this pandemic hasn't washed out all the ills of inequities in society, well, you're never going to get another wake-up call at all. This is the time to make change or go home and let somebody else, make a crack at
it. Yeah. Well, I'll vote for you if you run for premier or prime minister.
After last week dealing with some matters, I'm more than ever now potentially looking at both avenues to take my avenue into politics, either provincially or nationally. Because the other thing too, I'll share with you. Back in 2012, at the time, I wrote former President Barack Obama a letter. 18 months later, in July 2024, I actually got a letter from President Obama when he was still in office. I don't think there's very few Newfoundlanders, let alone Canadians, has a letter from 1600 Pennsylvania, a presidential C in the White House on it. So the girlfriend at the time was saying to me, when they got something, what's 1600? I said, that's the White House there. So,
sorry, what year was that? 2014?
2012, about 10, 11 years ago. I wrote it, and then I received it 18 months after, sort of thing at home, So he really appreciated the work I'm doing in mental health advocacy, and he said our values are aligned, sort of thing. So if I was an American, I'm not saying get into that whole game, but I would run for president down here, because that whole place is imploding big time.
Yeah, that's a whole other ball of wax. The American politics. Yeah. So how did you get into mental health advocating, and like what sparked that interest?
It's kind of, Todd, is that I had my own personal lived experience with mental health. I've dealt with anxiety from, I think, a very young age, along with some obsessive compulsive disorder. Wasn't officially diagnosed until I was about 15. And then about 15 years ago, I went through an event that I developed post-traumatic stress disorder. So I have all those beautiful things around me. And but I think as growing up, I was always a very shy and quiet child, and wouldn't say boo to anybody, sort of thing. And my grandmother, who raised me for the first few years of my life, when my mother went back to work, I had a closer bond with my grandmother than my mother. And even though I had challenges growing up, she always said Glenn would come to his fruition. And there's no more results showing today of the awards, the accolades, the boards, the committees that I sit on in the leadership capacity. So that's kind of where this all is personal. Plus, I've had family and friends around me that had their own. And, the squeaky wheel kind of gets the grease, and I kind of got a bit of a voice. So I make sure I use it for maximum capacity, not just for myself.
Yeah, I was, I was doing some research on you, of course, and I stopped reading the amount of boards you were on, because I was like, what? Yeah. So it's pretty impressive. I don't know how you find the time or energy, BD. I mean, an hour meeting a week for me is like torture. I couldn't imagine the amount of meetings you have for all these boards you're on.
Yeah, thank you, Todd, for that. Those kind, generous words. I think because it's such a passion of mine, I make it dedicated. Even though I try to do that work-life balance, and even to a partner today, like she says, it's like, how do you keep your own mental health from crapping out? And I just keep saying is that I do my best at all, because it needs to be addressed. Because if it isn't, it's going to become a bigger issue. And as I've said in many interviews prior to, Todd, is that I'm fearful for the young generation after this pandemic, because I don't think they have the tools or the coping mechanisms that a lot of us who've had mental health for periods of time to, sort of thing. So I always kind of said through this pandemic, I was kind of blessed having a bit of a mental health issue, because I knew how to deal with social isolation when we all went into lockdown a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm. I actually, in a lot of ways, I liked the pandemic, because I was like, I get to stay home. This is amazing. I'm forced. I thrived. Of course, there was a lot of anxiety and stuff too, because of what's happening all around me. But the isolating part, I didn't mind. But yeah, my kids, they're now 18 and 16, but they went through. My son, he like grade 10, 11, and 12. I mean, his whole high school career, that's when you're like most active with friends and social and stuff, and he missed out on all of it, and he missed out all the trips and all the fun stuff, and I can see it's affected him. So I 100% agree that it can be scary for the younger people.
Absolutely. And I think, resilience, and like I'm also a facilitator around the Virtues Project, also came out of some work in psychology from a husband-wife team from BC who created it more than 30 years ago. And some of the tools that I was exposed to more than 50, I wish I had it even when I was younger at all. And I think the trouble today is that technology is a great enabler, but it's also a great disenabler. And I think kids don't know how to create stuff unless they're attached to technology. And I think that comes at the peril of their mental health, versus like we all going to grow up and had to go out and, play soccer or hockey or make our own fun, sort of thing. And that's something that that resilience thing at all. And like if they don't get the approval, it really shows how their emotions come out of whack big time, sort of thing. So, and it doesn't just apply to young people. There's old people and middle-aged people in the similar thing at all. But I think a lot around mental health too, Todd, is that you got to be your own self-advocate if you want anything done out of life, because the systems are set up in so much for failure at all. And it is shocking in one of the most, Canada being one of the G7 countries, that we're still lacking our sister nations like UK and Australia, New Zealand, which puts more money into mental health. So it's sad, but when people are sick, as I always keep saying, the disconnect between mental health and physical health is that, like, when people go in to have a heart issue or whatever, diabetes, whatever, there's always the cards, the flowers, the stuff they're given. But when people are into a mental health facility, it's like, we don't talk about that. We put it in the closet, and that's where that whole stigma needs to be eradicated, because, as I keep saying, the head and the mind isn't disconnected from the body, sort of thing. It's all part of the same being as a human.
I 100% agree. That's something I talk about too in some of my public speaking. It's if the people that are sick aren't willing to change the stigma and be open and talk about it and advocate for ourselves, then you can't expect people that have no idea what it's like to change. So, I mean, that's usually the way it goes, whatever kind of group you're in, you have to kind of self-advocate. Otherwise, no one's going to do it for you. And therefore the stigma just keeps perpetuating. But, even when, like I've seen even a family member, they lost their life to mental illness, and in the obituaries, even it says, lost their life suddenly. It's very vague, and it's, it's fine. Like if they passed away from cancer or diabetes or some other physical ailment, they would say, send flowers to, or donations to these companies. But, it really bothers me when people still don't open up about that in their obituaries.
And I always keep saying, like, sometimes you can see the connection, especially if it's donated to one of the Mental Health Association, the Canadian Mental Health. And I always keep saying it all, donate it to wherever the person, because they might have had a passion for animals or wilderness or outdoor or whatever sort of thing. And, like that correlation, sometimes people say, oh, well, die by suicide. And I think it just, again, you got to open up, because I was a public face here more than 10 years ago, or about 10 years ago in the province. And I heard from CEOs right down to executive directors of community-based organizations. And they said, you were so brave to say that you were dealing with this. And I said, look, you're no better than me, and I'm no better than you. And the more that we talk about it, because, there's support groups out for all the other physical illnesses, and they're always encouraged by healthcare professionals to go and seek out support. So the same thing, doctors and nurses and other healthcare professionals say, well, seek out these groups and get the support, because, sometimes mental health can be a more disability challenge to people than just physical ailment.
Absolutely, yeah. So you actually got a real major award. It was the humanitarian something or other.
yeah. I picked up two big awards over the last almost 2 years now. In December of 2021, I was given the Newfoundland and Labrador Human Rights Champion Award for mental health in the province, sort of thing. Very honored by the governor of Newfoundland, Premier Fury, and the Human Rights Commission. But last year, I received an International Mental Health Award from the National Alliance on Mental Illness. I'm the first and only Canadian to receive this award. It's the 2022 Lionel Aldridge Champions Award for Mental Health. And like a lot of people say, it's time for these governments in Canada, because I know either the Biden administration and the White House is potentially going to be doing something, and they're saying, especially, something this prestigious. The Trudeau government or the Fury government in Newfoundland should be promoting this, because, again, it's not the sexy thing, but due to the fact it's the biggest public health crisis we currently got going, and all sort of thing. So very honored, very privileged to be honored. I don't know who nominated me at all, but I never thought in my life I would ever receive that award. But I've always said in my acceptance speech, I accept this on behalf of many other advocates. Their names are equally as important to be on those awards as mine.
Well, congratulations on that. That's amazing.
Thank you very much.
It was me. I nominated you.
Thank you.
No, I don't. So did the president of the world give you that? Like, whose hand did you have to shake to get that award? Who presented it?
Well, I mean, it must be of the good advocacy, the work, the engagement that I've been doing over the years, sort of thing at all. Because, like I say, it's only generally been designated for American citizens. So even to receive this outside the United States, because I think I'm in the company of former other well-known Americans, like I think Vice President Al Gore. And when the president was the vice president at the time, Joe Biden, and his first lady, and it was Dr. Jill Biden, the second lady, or at the time. So I'm in pretty good company now with all of the rolling around with the senior American leadership.
but but I mean, did you the person that actually handed you the award, were they some high up mucky muck? Was it like Beyonce, or was it just
No,
mailed to you?
it was mailed to me because of the pandemic. It was a virtual thing at all, so I
Ah,
couldn't attend it. But it was the president of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Dan Gillingson Jr. I think that's his name, sort of thing. So yeah, I wouldn't mind receiving it from Queen Bee or any of those other celebrity people. So maybe the next go around, I'll get maybe Mariah Carey, somebody give me an award.
yeah. Well, that's well. See, this stupid pandemic, it even affected your award ceremony.
Absolutely.
Well, that's amazing. Yeah, the congratulations on that. Maybe I'll get one this year. For
Absolutely.
no, I
Absolutely.
don't. I'm just kidding. I'm not on any boards or anything. I just sit in my basement and talk to guys like you.
Sure. Well, I mean, you should get an award for even the work you're doing at all, as somebody in the media sector at all, because if it wasn't for people like you and my connection, or the connection through Sandy that connected me to you at all, I wouldn't be having the opportunity to speak to you at all. So, in your own right, you should be receiving your own acknowledgement.
Um, okay, you can just send me some money. That'll be good
Okay.
enough.
I'll see what the White House can send me.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, you were talking about how Canada, out of the G7 countries, we're one of the less, we're on the bottom of the list for funding for mental health. And when I started doing the advocacy work, Saskatchewan, that's where I live, was on the bottom of the provinces. So I thought, well, shit, if Saskatchewan's on the bottom of the provinces for funding for mental health and Canada's on the bottom of the G7 for funding in mental health, there's probably third world countries that are getting better mental health care than people in Saskatchewan. That was a scary thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no offense to third world countries, but
And I've made that in a number of interviews, a number of advocacy pieces. I mean, like I say, the UK, France, I think New Zealand, Australia, and some of the other, maybe even Germany, and even the States, even though, they don't have a public health system at all, they still seem to do better than Canada. And I mean, Newfoundland being one of the more poorer cousins of the Federation. I mean, we had a blip for a while, but I think we've gone down the other end now again in terms of very much a bankrupt province here at all, or very close to it. Um, it's said a basic human right to access mental health care isn't accessible. And it's by so many means where, people got to pay out of pocket to see a psychologist, or they put on a public wait list in this province and similar across the country, 2+ years, and truly unacceptable. I mean, if you went in with a heart issue, would you be put on a waiting list for 2 years, or would you be asked to pay $200 to have a session with the cardiologist?
mm-hmm. That's right.
It's just terrible, like you say, at all. And knowing how that affects, people's living environments, their relationships, their work environments, their social environments, sort of thing. It's a huge issue, and it's time for governments to tackle this. And put it as I said in one of my previous interview in the province of VOCM. Mental health and poverty also has the overlinkage, and they need to be government's top priority in this country, at least.
So you do feel that socioeconomics has a big factor in mental health?
Absolutely. You can just see it in terms of people that are on a higher end of the spectrum at all. And I know we've all kind of been humbleized by this pandemic, but I mean, at the end of the day, you just look at the Canada Emergency Response Fund of the CERB that went out from the federal government there at the beginning of the pandemic, and said that people shouldn't be living on less than $2,000 a month for their housing, their transportation, their food, their utilities, their basic necessities of life, versus all the various disabilities and social assistance welfare programs, or even some of the CPP or the OAS for seniors. I mean, I was very pleased last week, that the government has voted on the Canada Disability Benefit that could raise, I think, over 2 million Canadians out of poverty. Because I also sit on a national board dealing with poverty in this country, and you just see the correlation sort of thing, and you see it in terms of the issue of not just the healthcare, but also the public safety and the justice issues, because there's so many people that are going down that line because they don't have access to basic amenities of housing. Food insecurity is a big crisis now in this country, of a number of people that are going to food banks sort of thing. And like, again, if you don't have your basic necessities of life, it's definitely going to affect your physical and your mental health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do see it in the judicial system as well. It's I don't know what exactly the numbers are, but I think it's around 90% or something like that. That the people that are in prison right now, it's all somewhat drug related or addiction related, whether they were there for robbery to support their addiction, or sex work for addiction, or trafficking and all this stuff. And I mean, all that addiction stuff, that to me, that's a mental illness. That's a mental health
concern.
So yeah. And I mean, of course, the people in prison quite often are socioeconomic. They're poor is what I'm trying to say.
They're deprived. They're at the bottom of the ladder.
Yeah.
I've spoken to one of the deputy police chiefs in the province here, as well as one of the deputies with the RCMP, and the same thing. Like, they're saying that mental health is not a justice issue; it's a healthcare issue. And I mean, I don't know where people stand on the issue about the legalization of certain drugs, but I mean, BC has taken their first step of trying to, curb that whole harm reduction model, which, a lot of people, I mean, you go right back to the legalization of cannabis, and we all stand on different levels of, standing on that. But at the end of the day, these are health issues. These are not, you're not out, committing violent robbery. Well, you are, because it's going back to social, but I mean, like, or rapes or murders. I mean, really serious crimes sort of thing. I mean, these are health issues, and they need to be dealt in the healthcare system, not in the judicial and the justice. Again, as a public safety, because of all the break-ins that have happened across this country, people are feeling very unsafe, knowing that they don't know if they could be burglarized by somebody coming in looking for their next whatever for the next hit sort of thing, which is pretty sad commentary on the state of society. And it's also, I've always said, the governments, federal, provincial, municipal, it really shows how, if you're how you treat the most vulnerable. If you're putting no priority, but you're giving, Gale and Weston and all your billionaire friends, tax breaks to buy freezers for Loblaws, at the same time people don't have enough to put in their stomachs. I think there needs to be a change there at all, because it's clearly doesn't need to be a priority, which it definitely needs to be.
Yeah. It's sad when I don't remember the stats anymore. When I was doing more advocating, I used to know the stats, but they're probably old now anyway. But just how when governments invest into mental health, just how much that's actually like cost savings for them. It's like, you're saving money by investing into that, but like harm reduction and things that are maybe some people with ideologies are against, even, and it always baffles my mind. It's like, you're the government, budgets and things are, top of your priority, but yet you won't invest in things that are going to save you money because of your ideology, and it's so frustrating.
Absolutely, Todd, because I mean, like, in an interview I had there a couple of weeks ago for the Bell Let's Talk, and that's another thing we can chew in on. But it's the vantage point, as I said, look, they're all about investing in oil and gas or new energy or this green. And at the end of the day, look, wherever your stand is on climate change, it's always going to be around. It's going to be long after we're gone. Our ancestors will be here at all and still be moving through it all. But at the end of the day, you need to put your money in there. So if you can give 20 million or 20 billion to, big oil companies like ExxonMobil, and I'm just trying to pick on that, or Loblaws, or any of these big multinational entities, well, where is the priority to helping? And I always keep saying, you need people that have had lived experience, direct or indirect, that have been touched in government, because that's the only time a lot of these projects, like the mobile crisis teams, have ever had that got green lighted here. Somebody that was in the senior cabinet position had a connection to a family or friend that was dealing with it, and that's the only reason. So, like, you need people in there that know what's going on, not people who've had silver spoon in their mouth, have never worried about struggle, have never worried about relationship breakdown, never worried about losing their job, putting food on the table, raising their kids, taking care of their elderly parents, sort of thing at all. You need to take the elitism out of elections and politics and politicians.
Yeah, well, yeah, good luck with that. What do you feel about MAID, the medical assistance in death when it comes to mental illness and mental health in Canada? So, well, actually, for people that don't know, that's something that was passed in Canada, and now they've kind of backtracked a bit. They're stepping back and saying, oh, maybe we should look at this for another year before we pass this law. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, it's quite timely there. I think last week, David Lamenti, the Justice Minister, came out and said they're doing a review for at least a year. And I was looking there on Sunday, Ian Hannah-Menti with CBC, actually, that was the topic they had on for cross-country checkup. And I mean, it's a very divided issue, but from my vantage point, and even like professionals, because they had psychologists, psychiatrists making on either end, I think we need to support life over death, unless it's really deemed it's terminal. I mean, like even people with terminal cancers or heart issues still have the ability to live, sort of thing. So I think it's a slippery slope, because people say, well, if you're not housed or you're homeless, does that qualify you for MAD, for a medical assistant in death? Like, or do you don't have access to food security? I mean, like it's really coming down to, I think it should be based on each individual circumstance. But I think we need more social supports to create life, because, I'm a Christian by faith at all. I know there's a God, there's a Jesus Christ, but wherever anybody else, stands on that and their faith journey at all, I support. But we're here to live for a reason. We're not here to die. So, like, my perspective is, we need support. So, but again, if people feel that they can't, well, it's their personal choice, sort of thing. But my advantage is that we need to look at other means to keep people alive if possible at all, because it'd be sad that somebody could lose their life because of mental illness and legislation that the government is pushing.
Yeah, I agree. I spoke, I don't know, a few episodes back with a doctor from Toronto, and his big worry is that it's going to be the most vulnerable people, the people that are poor and stuff that are going to, is basically going to be attack on them, because they don't have access to mental health services. And one of the conditions was you tried everything that you possibly can to get better, and if you can't, then you're accepted for MAID. But poor people in isolated locations and stuff have worse services. So his point was that it's basically attack on poor people. And
absolutely,
I don't fully disagree. The other thing he was saying is when some people got the green light for MAID, they actually started to improve. So the fact that it's supposed to be terminal and that you're not going to get better, and then the fact that you actually get better, that proves to me right there that you're not terminal, obviously, if you're able to get better. So,
and that kind of goes to a point of one of the callers they had on who had a very severe mental illness, and either was bipolar or schizophrenia 15 years ago, and they were saying how they had the ability to, they were fearful if this happened, they were felt like they were walking in cement boots, sort of thing, like they had no quality in life, and eventually getting the right help, the right treatment, the right support, they're living their best life. They're being supported by their family, they get a chance to enjoy their grandchildren and other aspects of the social. And that's the perspective of it all. This shouldn't be an attack on poor and poverty of you got encampments, like, again, going back to the whole housing crisis we have in this country too. It's all interlocked again. So and she said, well, if she could probably be dead today if the legislation was gone through 15 years, but she now has a quality of life, and I agree with 100%. We need to support people regardless of where they sit on the economic structure of this society, because I always keep saying, I don't care if you're a billionaire, you only get 10 cents to your name, you're worth something and you can contribute to society.
Mm-hmm. And not saying that wealthy people don't have mental health issues. They just have better access to services, and they're able to afford better services, or cut through waiting lines and stuff. I was going to say, I was just diagnosed with ADHD, and Just that alone too has been, it's turned my life around. It's completely life changing. Not that I was, in the past I have been on, suicidal and stuff, but recently, not that I was suicidal, but it took 45 years to get the proper diagnosis and the proper medication, the proper coaching and therapy to actually improve my life. So it's not, so yeah, I mean, for me, it's, people are going to do it anyway if they're going to take their lives.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. I mean, like, I've never had any, suicidal thoughts, but I mean, like, people, like you say, will take their own lives regardless of what the government is saying at all. And I mean, it almost goes back to the perspective, like when the Morgenthaler, the issue around the births, the pregnancies that were being, like, it's a perspective government shouldn't be involved. I mean, that should be between, an individual, their faith, their social supports at the end of the day. And like, I mean, even at the end of the day, when I was at some of my worst in life at all, I always had the ability in some way to just keep pushing through, even though there were some dark days in my life. So I think we've all been there at some point at all. And it's the perspective is to reach out for support and to talk to somebody. I mean, if it's a counselor, if it's somebody in the faith community, it's somebody, a teacher, a parent, a cousin, neighbor, because we're all struggling on some levels, Todd. And your problems are probably no worse than anybody else's at the end of the day. You just need support. And I think that's where the lacking problem is. The money, in terms of the premiers now meeting with the prime minister over the next couple of days, we need to put money into helping people live good quality lives at all. Like, the money is there. I mean, like, we spend, it's not a spending problem. Is where is the money going? Is it going to the services, or is it getting tied up in administration? And that's where I fear it is. It's tied up in the administration, the infrastructure, versus, I mean, a lot of the issues in mental health could be solved, with less than $1 billion. It can be done. It just, you need the people, you need the support, and it needs to be a priority sort of thing. So, I totally agree what you said on that issue around medical systems and dying at all. We need to live and live best lives, because we're here for a purpose. We're not here to end our lives. That's just my thinking in life.
Hey folks, we're just going to take a quick break here so I could talk about a friend of mine's podcast. His name is John Cerrone, and it's the Feel Free podcast. And Feel Free is a general wellness podcast run by John Cerrone. He's a recovering addict with a mission to help people better understand their habits so they can achieve their true potential in order to chase their dreams. With the help of some charismatic guests, the topics and conversations covered range from addiction, diet, exercise, burnout, to mental health, and many more. So please, feel free to follow my friend John's podcast, Feel Free. Yeah, and it's so unfair that it's up to us to have to be our own self-advocates. Whereas, like you said, if with someone with cancer or something, there's people in healthcare that are going to try to find the best health services for you physically. But when it comes to mental health, it's you have to basically advocate for yourself. And if you don't, then, we have MAID for you. It's like, what? No, that's not a good option. Like, how about you just have better services? We can change the stigma so that, we can all live and, the fact that that's an option is just baffling to me. But
I agree with you 100%, Todd, because like you just speak on that whole self-advocacy, and for stuff that I've needed to avail over the years at all. I got well-connected bureaucrats and senior politicians in this province, in this country, but I know the right people to talk to. I've had relationships built with these people prior to government and in government, but the way it's set up for so many people is it's an 800 number, or it's a no-name email with a government thing, and most of the time they never. So it's like, and then even for people that have supported through the last number of years, being in a full capacity to help people at all. People says, like, you don't give up, Glenn, because I said, this is your right. You got the right to live. You got the right for these supports. And the government is there, supposed to be there to support people and help people when they are struggling. I mean, that's the mandate of government. I mean, they're into a lot of things that they don't need to be into. But the main thing is they're there to provide services, mental health or otherwise, to help people, live. Not, again, it goes back to the poverty piece, how, so many people are living in legislative poverty rates. And overall, that's affecting people's mental health too. So hopefully, the work of universal or guaranteed basic income, as well as a livable guaranteed income, not a minimum wage, but a livable wage, comes to fruition soon, because it's being pushed in the United States. I think in California now they're pushing, I think, $15 an hour, and New York and a few other states. So, like, there's parts of free market that can create this at all. So it goes back to being a priority, Todd. If it is a priority, if
Mm-hmm.
it isn't.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. And of course, it's a priority if you have the lived experience, like you said, and then it becomes personal. So then you have your own agenda that you're trying to push, and if you don't have that agenda, then I guess we're all shit out of luck. um, has anyone ever tried to sue the government as for like a human rights issue? You're not giving enough. Like to me, that MAID is almost a human rights issue, and I know I'm probably pushing some people's buttons because they're for it, but that's not a human right. Isn't here's the best we can do. We can help you die. It should be we should help you live, right?
Yeah.
And to not provide those services, is that not a human rights thing? Could someone sue?
I would think it's 100%. I don't know if there's been any cases provincially or federally, but I think it could be a very legitimate case. I mean, I used a prime example here. There was a situation in this province where there was an elderly lady recently evicted from a city-owned property, and they're saying she was disabled, well up in her 80s. Because she couldn't get access to the smoking area, and they think that's the reason she was given no. And it's like the perspective is like, again, somebody that's so vulnerable, no supports, and their MHA and other community organizations, and it's just the same thing at all. It's like, people should be able to get up each day and live some good quality of life. It's the same thing with the cost of living, how this is affecting people's mental health, how all our utility bills are constantly going up. But I mean, is the Bells of the world, the Rogers of the world, the Hydros of the world, are they, prime example, helping somebody navigate? And I went right up to the CEO of one of the telcos at all, and it's like, I have the relationship because, again, I don't say no, I don't take no for an answer. But again, it's sad that you got to push the right up to the top to make any decisions at all. Like, it should be, look, if we had universal income, and a lot of people think that it creates people laziness, and it doesn't, because in some of the Scandinavian countries, and I think in Australia, New Zealand, where they've got it, people have gone back to work. People have got better employment. They've gone back to school for better upgrading, sort of thing. So, like, again, people need a floor under them. And if they don't have a floor under them, they're going to fall, and they're going to fall hard. And either they're going to fall to, not having basic housing or basic food, or their mental health's going to crap out, or they're going to do something criminalized, which is going to tie them up, with a criminal record, which they're not going to be able to function in society, sort of thing. So it's like each piece is interlocked, sort of thing. So the better to support people before they become at crisis, because that seems to be it's this famous thing our opposition have said here, leader, and I've said against this government. They're all reactive, and sit on the federal level, they're not proactive. If we were proactive, we wouldn't have half the problems going on in this society.
Mm-hmm. I often wonder if sometimes they do it on purpose so that they have someone to blame and keep that us versus them and that fear, and they keep me in office because criminals and drug addicts, and so they purposely don't do that, because who wants kumbaya when you can keep fear and keep everybody us versus them, and kind of ignorant, really.
I mean, you could just go back to last year when the issue of the protest in Ottawa and the borders on the vaccine mandates, the same thing. I mean, the vast majority of people were reasonable, logical Canadians that didn't want it, sort of thing. I mean, you're always going to have a few walnuts in any society at all. I mean, again, but you get them to and then a government and the prime minister saying, well, all these people that are not taking, 10 million Canadians didn't take any vaccine, well, they're all, they shouldn't be living in Canada. It's like, well, who makes that decision, prime minister? I mean, are you a doctor? Do you hold an epidemiology degree, in public health at all? So it's like, again, I think we got to get out of the politics of politics. We got to go back of doing the business for the people, because that's what you're elected for. You're getting our taxes to be elected officials. So it's time to do the bidding of the people, because that's what, you promised everything, the stars, the moon, the sun, not just to your friends that got the money, but to the ordinary citizen that are out there struggling every day to keep a roof over their head, or keep a job, or be involved in community, or whatever sort of thing. So yeah, it's sad, but hopefully smarter people come around, or more logical people come around and start to make change in the system, because we need this now forever at all. I mean, if this pandemic hasn't laid bare of all the ills of society, this could be a game changer for better and not for worse. And that's all we can hope.
It's mind-boggling to me how how mental health and mental illness can be a political issue. It's like, it's not a political issue. It's a human right issue, and that's it. It's just, it drives me batty that people can twist it that way. You were talking about Bell. So people around the world that don't know, that are listening, Bell in Canada, it's a big communications company, TV and internet and all that stuff. And every year we have Bell Let's Talk Day, and it's all, let's get everybody in Canada to talk about mental illness and mental health and all that stuff. And it's almost a national holiday at this point. It's like people wind up for it and stuff. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, and I kind of, I think I agree what you're saying, Todd, because I think when they first rolled it out more than a decade ago now at all, and as soon, I think, it's supposed to be coming to an end, and I've been involved with senior leadership there in terms of communication, in terms of bringing my advocacy to the table. And look, at the end of the day, I got to give credit first. It's the first major Canadian corporation to even tackle it. So, but at the end of the day, as I've said in many other interviews too, it's a free marketing tool for the corporation. And I mean, it was great this year that they gave 10 million. It's not how many hashtags or tweets or Facebooks or likes or calls or whatever, you gotta, but I mean, 10 million to a multi-billion-dollar corporation like Bell is pocket change. I mean, they could be doing 50 million or 100 million, really. I mean, if, and maybe it needs to, and I've said, to spur other Canadian and provincial companies to get out and start doing something about it, because at the end of the day, the Medical Commission of Canada, Louise Bradbury, also somebody from Newfoundland, a good friend of mine, former CEO, said that like 500,000 Canadians, and the Commission keeps banging this out, 500,000 Canadians don't go to work each day, costing the Canadian economy nearly 60 billion or more, and is $1 trillion on the global stage. So, I mean, it's time to put your money where your mouth is at all, and make it that it just shouldn't be the Bell Let's Talk Day too, Todd. I mean, it's the Mental Illness Awareness Week or the Mental Health Week or whatever, Mental Health Month or whatever sort of thing, or eating disorders and, PTSD days. And like, mental health should be 24/7 regardless, sort of thing, So, I got to give credit first, but at the end of the day, like somebody said to me, they had a great idea, but where was the follow through? Like, you mean, okay, they're giving some money to these small community-based organizations, but, $5,000 grants and $10,000 grants, where does that go, really, at the end of the day? I mean, like somebody said to me a while ago, and when I was thinking about it, I think that's the way it should have been. It should have been, we got the awareness, now what are we going to do about it? Because there's a disconnect between the awareness and the and the service and support we need.
Yeah, I guess that's the problem of, being in a capitalist country, and because you see it even on like Pride Month and stuff. It's like McDonald's now has a rainbow M and stuff. It's like, this is all just PR, and every company is just latching onto it. And but again, I also agree that kudos for them for starting something like this, but also at this point, it's like, this is just a big ad campaign for them.
And the other part too, Todd, is like, I think RBC has done a lot for youth and children mental health. So there has been some other Canadian corporations kind of, stepping up. And the other thing you just made about the Pride thing, something that I've had a bit of a challenge or a bit of, a disagreement with a lot of these organizations, either being Medical Commission of Canada, the Canadian Mental Health Association, is that like they start now breaking it down of like these genders or race or ethnicity. And I think that's divide. Look, I know people are coming out of the Ukraine and some of these war-torn countries. We've never experienced what they've gone through. But like, to break it down, I think you're only causing chaos among communities. And when governments see these organizations not functioning, sort of thing, like where your race is, your faith, your gender shouldn't be based on your mental health concern. Because like I say, if you had a heart issue, would they say, male or female or LBGQ? Do you line up in this line, or the same thing, you from Ukraine or you from, China or from America or from Canada, sort of thing. So like, I think that's something now that's got everything kind of wishy-washy at all. And again, it's causing more chaos than help. So like, mental health, so that's something that I'm very strong on, and I get a lot of pushback. But I have a lot of people say, well, you're a white Caucasian male. Yes, but my mental health's no different than somebody that may be LBGQ coming from another foreign country with a thing at all, sort of thing. It's all mental health. Like, your heart is no different if you come from a certain whatever sort of thing. So it's something that I'm trying to make change, and hopefully will.
Interesting. Yeah. I never thought about it that way. Yeah, but you're right. Mental health. It's just, and I have said before, like you can't compare trauma, you can't compare pain, you can't compare these things. It's mental health is mental health. So yeah, whether you try to compartmentalize everybody in society and give them labels and stuff, which I get. I understand. We like our tribes and stuff, but ultimately, mental health affects everyone, and it doesn't matter what tribe you're part of. So, yeah, I have to agree with you there.
And I think it's the old adage: we can be diverse but unified. But it seems like
Mhm.
we're diverse but not unified, and that's what seems to be going on now at all. So I mean, we're all supposed to heal in community. We need to heal together, understanding we have different perspectives of life circumstances, sort of thing at all. And that seems to be the agenda we need to go on, not the agenda that's currently being played out by governments and society.
Yeah, that whole us versus them, and we have it
Yeah.
worse, and they're more entitled, and yeah, let's just help everybody.
And it's the same thing. Certain media outlets at all. Seems like if you're not of indigenous or Indian status, or are you somebody that's immigrant or LBGQ, it's like we can't get everybody else on, but we got to kind of repeat that cycle, sort of thing. And I think people are actually getting tired of that at all because it's affecting people's mental health. It's like, we all got mental health. Let's just work together, sort of thing at all, and get everybody's viewpoint to the table, and not saying one is any better than the other, because that's why everybody says, how do you work so well with people? It's like we're all one people, regardless of who we are, what we believe, and how we live. And I think we need to get back to that normality of just living and supporting each other.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It's society's becoming more polarized and extreme, and isolating. The groups are isolating themselves more and more from each other, and when in fact we have this huge common ground, and I think mental illness and mental health is a huge part of that because we all have brains, we all have mental health. So yeah, I think that's a fair statement. I might get some pushback too now. I don't know, but
But it creates visibility too, Todd, at all, because it gets people to thinking, really, at the end of the day, at all. You know what I mean? And that's what needs to be talked about at all, because like a lot of people who are probably a bit more conservative versus on the left, or more liberal, thinks that is too much of a Marxist social society. And I'm saying, like, there's equal parts to it all. Look, I'm very much supporting the most vulnerable, and I'm also very much a capitalist. So you can do both. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. But it just seems now, it's like if you're a capitalist, you don't believe in social support, or if you believe in social support, you don't believe in capitalism at all. And it's like, you can do all. We can all work together at all, and that's what needs to really come together at all, because there's aspects of business to figure out some of these things. The government can't figure it out too, sort of thing. So I mean, we all got to get in the boat and kind of sing kumbaya and roll down the river together, sort of thing. Because the more that we divide people, I think is only going to create more division and more strife, and ultimately it's going to affect society. But more importantly, in terms of what we're dealing with here today, mental health and mental illness and addiction.
right, yeah, I agree. And I mean, in a way, my podcast, reflects that in a way. I've talked to trans people, I've talked to indigenous people, I've talked to young people, I've talked to old people, I've talked to women, I've talked to men, and we all have this commonality. And instead of looking in a microscope to finding our differences, let's just take a step back and look at what we have in common, and deal with that and celebrate that even.
And like I've said before there, Todd, is that if we all, in terms of this conversation around mental health, um, are united, the various different stakeholders dealing with different population groups, then the government will work. But when they're seeing they're all fighting against for the same dollar, sort of thing, well, then the government saying, we're not going to, because this one's fighting against this one. So it's like, yeah, we really need to, like you say, like a friend of mine who used to be head of one of the mental health association in this province said that, even this province, you need like a center of excellence. So maybe somebody dealing with youth mental health, or women's mental health, or LBGQ mental health, or immigrant mental health, or men's mental health, or suicide, like, and you have a major building, and then each has their own specialty. I mean, it's no different in like different aspects of medicine and other disciplines or education. Everybody has different specialty, and I think that's where we need to go with all. It's like you get a big umbrella organization, and then you get all these sub ones, but we're all running for the same goalpost to have a better society. Because God help of young people coming up today, and how they're challenged to survive, and they'll have kids and they may not have the coping mechanism. So like, I'm hopeful. I'm a very optimistic person, Todd, but I'm also fearful of, if we don't get kids on the right track of an education, where do they go in society? Do they contribute, or do they become a drain on treasury and social programs of this country too? And not just locals, but like even internationals. We need to work together.
Do you have kids?
I have no kids, not yet.
Well, what do you care then? You'll be dead.
I got nieces and nephews at all, and I got a lot of friends with children, sort of thing at all. So I'm around kids more times than if I had my own, sort of thing. But in due course, myself and my partner hopefully will have kids one of these days, sort of thing. So I look forward to that, and all the good, bad, and indifferent that comes with
that. Okay, fair enough. I'll let you care about the future then. But it's true what you were talking about, like the men's mental health and the LGBTQ mental health, and like you don't have an LGBTQ cardiac service, you don't have a men's cardiac service, you don't have Indigenous cardiac service. It's all just the cardiac service. I've thought that before myself too. Like all these, because it's true. There's so many mental health like fundraisers and charities and stuff. Like if we all just got together, but I guess that's humans for you.
I mean, I'm a bit of a business and a history buff too, and I've read the biography of J.P. Morgan, the American financier, and back in I think 1913, when it was the first collapse of the stock market or the American market, he locked I think 20 or 30 of the top executives in his boardroom, and he wouldn't let them out until they come. And I think that's what needs to happen again. Is that
a kidnapping?
Kidnapping, yeah, we can do that now. I'm just put them all into a certain place, and they all have to come to some fruition that we have more in common than differences at all, versus the more that we divide. And then if they're looking for support from donors and charity and the public, more importantly at all, well, they're saying, well, why should we give to this cause versus that cause versus another cause, sort of thing. But it's all mental health. I have somebody, or I have my own lived experience with mental health at all. And I think that would work better for because all these charities, if it's mental health or other sectors, are challenged because of the state of the global economy, potential recession, potential job loss, sort of thing. So, I speak from so many angles on a mental health, the economic piece too, sort of thing. So that's something else to take consideration for your listeners, your viewers.
Yeah. We're almost out of time. Is there anything that you wanted to make sure was said that I didn't ask?
Just to kind of say that, please keep this in the forefront. As like I've said before, I may take my advocacy into the political apparatus, sort of thing. So I may be one of those bad politicians. You'll criticize me and may or may not have me back on your podcast. Do, of course, even if I'm doing good things, and take care of each other at all, and reach out for support, because we're all struggling on some level at all. If it's mental health, if it's physical, if it's economical, society, relationships, jobs, wherever, in society, and have a lot of respect and dignity for your fellow human being, because I always keep saying this, pay it forward, or like I always said at one of my first talks on mental health, based on your comfortability, either, give somebody a high five, a handshake, a hug, and because you don't know how something like that can make somebody's day, because somebody might have waken up and had some very devastating news of something happening in their life, or some tragedy that has occurred, or something that is, and that can make the world a difference. And I think we need to take more care of each other collectively as a species, but also each other. And there's no shame of reaching out at all, because at the end of the day, even the professionals, as I've talked to many of them, they have their own mental health, and they have to get their own support, because they're taking in all the crap that and all the stuff that we're dosing out to them at all. And if they don't take care of themselves, they're not going to be there to support us as well, sort of thing. So it's a great opportunity to talk with you, Todd, and hopefully this has been helpful to you and your listeners.
Just promise me when you become Prime Minister that you'll come on my podcast.
Absolutely. You got a guarantee on that one.
Thank you so much, Glenn. It's so appreciated that you're doing this fine work, and you never know. Maybe next time we talk, you'll be the Prime Minister of Canada, and that would be pretty amazing. If you want to follow Glenn on his social medias and stuff, it'll be in the show notes there, and reach out to him. And if you want to talk to him or have any questions, or you need a speaker for an event or something, you can just feel free to do that. hey, why don't you go to Instagram and check out Forever Raging Apparel? They sell awesome clothes, and a portion of every sale goes to Talk Suicide Canada. So you're supporting a good cause, you're getting some great clothes, and you're just being a good person. That's Forever Raging Apparel on Instagram. Also, if you like mental health podcasts, check out my buddy Jason. He's got the Rainy Days podcast. It's another mental health podcast. He's been on the show, episode something or other, and I was on his at one point too. He's got some new episodes dropping pretty soon, so you can go check him out. He's from the UK, so he's got a fancy accent as well. That's the Rainy Days podcast. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram so that you can see some of the Instagram lives that I'm doing with people. Bunny Hugs Podcast. I'm also on TikTok at Bunny Hugs Podcast. And of course, Facebook, Bunny Hugs and Mental Health. I'm always posting memes and videos and articles and things like that. So if you're not into the lives, there's other stuff too. So please follow me on there. And please rate and review the podcast on Apple or whatever app you're using to listen. It means so much. If you don't know how to support mental health services, simply just rate and review this podcast. If you rate and review the podcast, it goes higher up in the charts so that more people can see it, more people can relate. We can normalize all these things, and all my wonderful guests can help more people. So that'd be really swell of you. Well, thank you for listening to another episode, and I will see you next week. In the meantime, please remember to make your beds and take your meds. Bye.